Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to the Debrief, a weekly Q&A podcast from your friends here at Sandals Church. I am your host, Justin Pardee, and I am back to life, back to reality. Yes, I knew we could do it. I'm here alongside my pal, Stephanie Schaefer, right across the table from me, and we are sitting here waiting for some real answers to tough questions from the Bible from our man, Pastor Matt Brown.
Yeah, it's the P&B.
You feeling good? Mm-hmm. We just had a great kickoff staff meeting for our whole staff this entire year of January, or this entire year of 2018. It's going to be a great year. We're excited. One of the things I got to be honest with you, I'm most excited about this year is coming up so soon. It is episode 100. We are going back live in person for episode 100. We did episode 50. It was great, but this is episode 100. It needs to be twice as great. Greater. Yeah, twice as great. Stephanie, can you fill in our wonderful Debrief family, Debrief Nation?
And I will.
All about episode 100.
Debrief Nation. Don't try to make this like The Bachelor, okay?
Well, come on.
All right, we are going live for episode 100, and we are going to be at the Riverside Municipal Auditorium in beautiful downtown Riverside,
Can you
California.
believe it? It's going to be awesome. It's a great room.
It's going to be so great. It's so pretty. Go look up pictures on Google.
I hope they still have the Chinese lights for New Year's, for Chinese New Year's. Have you seen it downtown?
Yeah, there are colors. It'd be perfect.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah. I'll ask them to keep those up.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
You can do that for us. We will be there on the evening of Monday, February 26th, and we're going to have a special way for you to make sure to save your seat this time, because I know we ran out of room last time. We want to make sure to have room for as many people as possible, so we're going to make sure you have an opportunity to save your seat. So make sure to tune in next week. We'll give you all the details on how to make that happen.
It's going to be awesome. Hopefully you're following along Facebook, Twitter, all those other things. We're actually live. We did it before. Today we're actually live. We tried before. Remember that one time we tried to go live and then I failed with technology?
And then it was like beeping in the background.
Elena saved us, and here we are live in 360 on Facebook right now.
They can see me too from that?
Yeah, they can.
It like goes all the way around.
But then if they don't want to see you, they can...
How does it see me? Where's the camera?
It's like this little thing.
But it's like a fisheye, so it wraps all the way
Do
around.
you think that's beneficial for you to put your finger in front of the fisheye?
I didn't mean... I was just trying to point, and I didn't realize how...
We're going to have to bring Alana back, bro.
Yeah.
She's definitely handling that technology game. The one thing that I am an expert at handling is excitement over our 5-star reviews that people leave us in the iTunes store. And we've got another excellent 5-star review. This one comes from Q from KY, and he says, whoever it is, gives us 5 stars. Refreshing. Boom. As someone that grew up in a church that pushed following rules of religion, it's nice to listen to people from a church that values both the relationship with their Savior and biblical knowledge. Amen. Too many churches are one or the other. Love you guys and gal.
Thanks.
That was nice. Some gals too, now that we've got Elena in the rotation. And always look forward to your wisdom. I think she's sending that last part to you, Pastor Matt, but we are welcoming you for the fun that you have on the show.
Well, Tammy listened to the show this week. She told me she really liked Elena's perspective, and she said she thought that she brought some stuff out in you too. Yeah. So I didn't listen to the episode, but my wife said that she thought that they were great.
I would say Elena makes all of us better.
It's true. It's true. Well, let's jump right into what everybody's here for. It's those questions, and that we have a lot of those. We're going to do some follow-up questions before we jump right into debriefing this weekend's sermon, which we also get to do.
That's right. So last week, Pastor Matt, you talked about Mark 10:18, which is part of that story where Jesus is calling out a rich young man for calling him good, which seems odd. So Sherry sent in a question and wanted to know, why did Jesus say that only God is good when he himself is God?
Right, because he's trying to get the rich young ruler to think. So this guy's brilliant. He's a scholar. And so he's trying to force him into really making a decision about who he believes Jesus is, because he's acknowledging that there's something about Jesus that comes from God, but the rich young ruler doesn't understand fully who he is. So Jesus is trying to really just set him up to make a decision. Look, if I am a good teacher, then I am from God and am in fact God, so you should leave everything and follow me. And ultimately, the dude doesn't. So he goes away. He leaves Jesus. So, and again, I think all of us need to ask ourselves, why do I call Jesus what I call him? And a lot of us use language that we don't really mean. You know, we say, Jesus is my Lord, and we don't act like that at all, or Jesus is my God, or I worship Jesus, and the truth is we worship a lot of things but Jesus. And so we just have to remember that, you know, even as Christians, we can be hypocritical with what we call Jesus. And so instead of focusing on condemning the world for how they don't acknowledge who he is, we really need to take a look at ourselves for how we claim that he's one thing, but we live as if he's another. So that's why.
There we go. Okay, this follow-up comes from Oliver, and it is a long question, but a good one. Thank you for talking about the unique struggle for men and masturbation on the last episode. I just want to thank you for letting me be out of the room when that was happening. Yeah, I'm in my 20s, and I am single. Sometimes I feel the need to masturbate and do it, but then feel like I need to confess it as a sin because I feel guilty after. In addition, I have nocturnal emissions from dreams that have imagery that I don't think is appropriate. This makes me feel bad, even though I don't have control over what I dream. My goal is to live my singleness with purity. What do I do?
Yeah, so I mean, there's really three aspects to this question. I feel like we covered, the masturbation issue last week. So again, if you're tuning in today, men biologically are different from women. There is actually a substantial difference because of our genders. And so one of the things with men is men produce semen, and about every 4 days, that stuff has to come out. And so the question is, how does that come out? And that's not to say that if you modify your lifestyle and your behavior, that over time, I believe that you can have a better self-control over the issue. But however, the issue of masturbation, specifically I talked about last week, is I don't think that the act is a sin. It's what are you thinking about when you're acting upon that? And you have to be really, really careful. So pornography for me is just simply watching others commit adultery. So why would you do that? I think that it's not helpful. It's not productive, and even leads to voyeurism, which is really, really difficult. So a lot of people who view pornography get sexually aroused by watching people have sex, but they don't know how to actually participate in the act of sex. And that's one of the really, really negative aspects of pornography that even non-Christian groups are talking about now, is people are not aroused by the real thing because they've so tweaked their mentality by looking at what is the fake thing. The dreams issue, man, I think we've, I'm not going to put you on the spot about sexual dreams, but I think we could all agree we've had some pretty freaking weird dreams. So, I mean, I've had dreams where I killed a lot of people. Do I feel bad about that? I mean, there's just some things. And so sexual dreams, for me, I mean, I've obviously had sex dreams, and sometimes, I feel the need to confess it, and sometimes I don't. One time in particular, I had just a really, really bizarre sexual dream about a woman in our church who was not my wife, and I didn't know what to do with it. And so I told Tammy about it, and she just started dying laughing. Thank God she wasn't intimidated by this particular woman whatsoever, but she just was dying laughing. And I kid you not, this is a true story. This is like real.
Okay.
I shared that with her in the morning. We went to Chick-fil-A that night at dinner, and that church member came up to us at Chick-fil-A and sat next to us and said, "How are you guys doing?" I was just like, "I'm going to hell." Like, my wife is just like dying laughing. So, right, I mean, I don't feel like I had any unhealthy thoughts towards that particular person. I didn't feel like I was lusting after her, or like there was nothing. I don't know why my brain does what it does. My brain does weird things, like.
Hey, I dreamed about a bunch of Oreos last night. So
yeah, I mean, right. I mean, my wife always dreams like that people are chasing her. Like, I can't tell you how many times I wake up in the middle of the night and I think someone's breaking in, but really what's happening is she's trying to get out, and I'm like, "Where are you going?" They're like, "She's attacking. They're attacking me. They're attacking me." I'm like, so dreams are like weird. I mean, they just are. And so what you need to do is you need to ask yourself, is this a real issue? Am I really lusting after this person? Has my relationship with this person become, I read an article about it. It's called quasi cheating or something on the internet. So you're not
pseudo.
Yeah. There we go. Pseudo cheating. And so what it means is you're not engaged in anything sexual, but you're texting a person, or you're you're interacting with a person and you're hiding it from your spouse. So I would agree that's dangerous. If you start having dreams about this person that you're engaging with, you really, really have to be careful. But we just have to give ourselves some grace. Look, our brains do weird things. So, pray through it, get an accountability, ask some people, okay, hey, are you seeing this in me? What's going on? I'm way more worried about what I'm doing while I'm awake than what I'm doing while I'm asleep. Yeah. And so I just think if your big burden is what happens at night when you go to sleep, God bless you. You're a saint. For most of us, right, we really, really need to watch what we're doing and how we're behaving when we're conscious. But that's not to say that God can't speak through dreams. He can. And so that's why you need community. You need to pray into the Holy Spirit, say, "God, what's going on here? What's happening to me?" And oftentimes, especially if you're a man and you've been engaging in pornography, you've been engaging in masturbation, or even in sex outside of marriage, and you stop that behavior, it's going to be a struggle. Your body is used to whatever you do. So it's just like I'm training for an Ironman again, and I haven't been doing that. Well, when I go out and run, I'm not singing hallelujah. It hurts. It's difficult. It's very, very hard because I'm forcing my body to do something different. So just know this as you disengage from sex outside of marriage. And just so you guys know, if you're single, you're all practicing. So this is what's important. And this is why I think sexual restraint is important even when you're single, is you're preparing yourself for what you're going to do in marriage. So a lot of people say, well, when I get married, I'm not going to look at porn. Well, what you're going to do is whatever you've been doing, because we're all practicing for something. We're all preparing for something. And so when you stop, I mean, if you go cold turkey on, masturbation or sex outside of marriage, your body's going to protest for a while, right? Jesus says the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. So the Holy Spirit speaking in us, and wanting us to do something. And so you just got to give yourself some grace and some time to figure that out. And also it depends upon your age. I will tell you guys this, it does get better as you age. I am so thankful for the one aspect of aging is that sex is not nearly as big of a challenge for me as a man in my 40s as it was in my teenage years, as my 20s and my 30s. So I'm super grateful for that aspect. I mean, actually testosterone levels lower in men as we age. And I think that's why I can think a little more clearly. So, that's just the truth. So give yourself some grace. You want to really, really be careful of, and again, so that's not to say that if you're constantly having these kinds of dreams, go talk to a psychologist, go come into Sandals and talk to Soul Care and get in a community group with people that you can talk about what's going on. Because a lot of times things that come out in our dreams are things that, are suppressed. And so like with my wife's issue with constantly trying to escape our house, something she's asked me to do our whole marriage is make sure all the doors are locked before I go to bed. Man, she's just worried about who comes in. I'm like, come in, dude, because I'm going to take you out, man. I'll go Rambo. So, or Jason Bourne. I gotta update my illustration. So I'm going to go Jason Bourne on somebody. That we're just different. But if I want to make my wife feel secure when she's sleeping, I need to make sure that she knows that the house is locked up and things are good. And so we do need to pay attention to our dreams. God can speak to our dreams. Sometimes our dreams are revealing subconscious, some issues that maybe we're repressing and we're not dealing with, but sometimes they're just wacky dreams. Mm. Like they're just weird. And everybody has that. So I don't think we need to, sometimes you just got to wake up and shake it off and go, wow, that was weird. So,
yeah, if anybody ever breaks into my house in the middle of the night, I'm prepared to go all Macaulay Culkin on them. Just some paint cans will be flying around the place. Hit them with a hot iron. And,
do you think our listeners know who Macaulay Culkin is?
Yeah, you went
he's like 40.
You went between Rambo and Jason Bourne. I'm pretty sure you just went right down the middle there.
Yeah, he's like 40 years old now.
Home Alone is so great.
It truly is. You know who made that movie? Hughes. A lot of people don't know that. So he also made The Breakfast Club. He did Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He did. Oh man,
John Hughes is
Pretty
the
in
guy's
Pink.
name?
John Hughes. Yeah. Oh, great.
Boom.
Uncle Buck, one of my favorites.
Welcome back, by the way, all the families listening in your minivan. It's now safe to continue listening.
We forgot to warn them.
I know.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna say I don't think we should blame people, but I'm pretty sure that's on Stephanie.
Okay.
You know what? Thank you. I was about to take that.
Every group has the Holy Spirit, and her name is Stephanie in this group, and she failed.
Yeah, where were you, Dolores? Come through on that.
Come on, Dolores.
Sorry, I'm still new to the whole parent thing.
Did you drop your name, Dolores?
I did. I
That's
kept
what
Keen
happened.
as my middle name.
Yeah.
Dolores is there in my heart.
Yeah, it makes it easier to travel.
Okay, so this last weekend, let's start debriefing the sermon. This last weekend, you were talking about how Jesus helps us through tough times. And while you were talking about that, you said we need to expect difficulty and shared 1 Peter 4:12.
That's right. And that verse says, "Dear friends, do not be surprised at the fiery trials you are going through as if something strange were happening to you." What then should our expectations be about how much suffering and happiness even should be in our lives?
Yeah, so I got to tell you, so people always say, I can't believe you said that. So like in my sermon, I wanted to say fiery diarrhea so bad because the word fiery as an adjective just makes things powerful.
It does.
So, but I didn't say that. But all of our debrief
Excellent
listeners
restraint.
got to hear. Oh, I know. I literally was like, I wanted to say it so bad, but I'm like, oh.
I'll tell you who would have appreciated that. Boaz. He would have loved it.
Yeah, only young boys appreciate poop metaphors. So anyways, oh my gosh, parents, crash the car. I apologize. But so, fiery trials. What was the question?
What should our expectations be about how much suffering and happiness should be in our lives?
Yeah, so let me say this. So we just started our new small group last night, and I want to give a shout out to just our question writers. So I write the initial questions, and we have a team that rewrites them. And man, we just had a great time of sharing. And we have some pretty solid people in our small group who've some of them gone overseas and been missionaries. And it was just amazing to hear them talk about how shocked they were by how hard it was to serve God. Like literally not knowing if they could make it. And I was just so thankful for them. And because I'm just like, man, they're warriors for Jesus. They were fine. And they were sharing their story and how hard it was. And literally, like, it just broke them their first 3 years on the mission field. And then Tammy and I started talking about, our struggle in the church and how hard it's been. And I just want to encourage you, walk through those questions. They were so fantastic. The first question is, what expectations do you have of suffering? And the next one is, are they biblical? And it's just like, boom, straight to your heart. So I would encourage you to work through those small group questions. Even if you're not in a community group, read those questions and talk about them with somebody that you care about, because it really brings out how you feel and what you think. So I would say, what should our expectations be about how much suffering and happiness should be in our lives. Go back and watch our happiness series, Beyond Happy. And I would say the number one category is you need to be realistic. And so I don't think any of us should want a lot of suffering, and I don't think any of us should never want to suffer. We need to be realistic. Things that are worth doing are usually hard to do, and that's just the reality. I'll tweet myself there. So so just know that, you got to be realistic. There's probably going to be some times where being a parent is really, really difficult. And if you haven't thought that, you're probably going to have a really hard time being a parent. Same thing with marriage. And this is why people, don't stay married, because it's easier to get on. Is it Tinder?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was going to say timber, but it's Tinder.
It's Tinder.
And you should both be thankful that your pastor doesn't know exactly what that is.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Man. No, I'm not a cheater. So, so what people do is they find somebody else rather than working on the specific issues. And, that's why affairs don't work, because sooner or later, your problems become that person. Mm-hmm. They just manifest themselves. And so new relationships are exciting and exhilarating at first, but, everybody's a package. Everybody is. And so guys always say, oh, that girl's the perfect package. Yeah, right. You just don't know her yet. There is no perfect package, but everybody's a package of good things and bad things, of how they were raised and what they think. And so we're all this package. And I think relationships are about trying to, say, okay, remind myself, okay, the overall package is great. Here's one specific issue where I got to work on or I got to give grace. So I just think be realistic. And let me say this, the more that you try to serve God, the harder life is going to be. The devil is going to try to stop everything you do for God. So if your life has never been challenging for your faith, you're probably not trying to do anything with your faith. So that's just the reality. So I'll be praying for you guys. But there are people all over the world right now as we speak that are suffering because of their faith in Jesus Christ. And if you've never had to suffer because of your faith, you've probably never stood up for your faith. So you just need to know that. And the world's changing. The world is changing. There are Judeo-Christian ideas are literally evaporating from the Western world, and it's being replaced with something that is not Christian at all. So,
yeah. And one of the things I think I really appreciate, I think you hit on this a lot in that Beyond Happy series that you mentioned, is that on the other side of that suffering is incredible joy. Like the question asked, how much suffering and happiness should we expect? Like there will be suffering, but I think there's also incredible joy in getting to follow Jesus and suffer for him and see what's on the other side of that. I know I can tend to think to the side of like, I just need to prepare myself for the worst case scenario. Like God's probably gonna make my life really, really terrible because I chose to follow him and I just need to be okay with that. It's like, no, like there will be hard things, but God will also do incredible, incredible, joyful things on the other side of that suffering. And so I just really appreciated how you, I think, spoke to both of those in that series,
and I think both are important. And if your life is nothing but suffering, that's probably not from God. You need to look at your personal choices, and you need to look at your personality. Again, I've had to unfollow a couple people who are constantly blogging about how life is a mess and a disaster, and it's like, look, man, if that's your post for 8 months, that's a you problem. So you need to take a look at yourself. And so, I think it's important to say, okay, that person's real. But if it's just over and over and over again, okay, now it's time to make some changes, because life shouldn't always be hard. I mean, so Jesus is going to do one of three things. He's going to change our situation, he's going to change our understanding, or he's going to change our direction. So something needs to give. And I got news. It's not God. You're the one that needs to give as a worshiper of God. So
let me ask you this question, and I've got a question about the question too afterwards. Samuel says, there are lots of different places in the Bible talking about personal suffering being God's will for our lives. What if we don't feel like we are suffering very much? Is lack of suffering a sign of lukewarm beliefs?
Well, as I read that question, I felt like an overwhelming desire for comfort is a sign of being lukewarm. Is I think we all want to be comfortable. We all want to not be, so a lot of people say this, well, I don't want to be rich, I just want to be comfortable. And so we feel that way in our marriage, and we feel that way with our kids or our work or our church. And so, if you've come to Sandals Church and nothing I've ever said has made you uncomfortable, you're probably in the wrong church. You need to be being poked a little bit, not overwhelmingly, or I'm not going to challenge everyone to sell everything and move to India, but you need to be challenged about your selfishness and your self-focusedness. So I would just say that I think that a sign of lukewarmness is just, I want comfort. I want to not suffer at all. And so we need to be careful about that. But I think that, God does use suffering for people who have stepped out in faith and, have wanted to do great things. So like, for example, in my 20s, I tore my left ACL in 1992, rehabbed. If you don't know what that is, that's the tendon that holds your knee
together or something.
Yeah. So I tore that playing soccer for California Baptist University. I rehabbed, worked really hard, came back, and immediately tore the ACL in my right knee. And it's amazing I'm not a drug addict because I was in so much pain. I can't describe to you the pain I had from, they got to drill holes in your bones and they cut tendons out of one area and they drill them and put them in another. The pain was overwhelming. And I just remember crying out to God, please take this suffering away. It hurts so bad. But I know that God was preparing me. He was preparing me, long suffering, being able to hang in there when everybody else bails is a Christ-like quality. You've got to learn to be able to do that in your marriage, in your friendships, in your church. A lot of people bail the second things get difficult. When we moved to the Hunter Park campus from Cal Baptist, 1,000 people left our church. 1,000.
Yeah.
And they all said, we just want to be in a church which meets in a gym. Well, what they really wanted to be is in a church that didn't ask for their money. So, and that's what people say, right? Well, a church just wants the money. Well, what they're really saying is what they love. People that give to Sandals Church never complain about the money. It's the people that don't. That's just the reality. I can't tell you how many times I've been pulled aside to receive counsel for someone who gives nothing to the church. It's just, thank you very much, Can
I ask you a question about Samuel? The first part of his question says, there are lots of different places in the Bible talking about personal suffering being God's will for our lives. That's the part I wanted to question. Is that true? I know that the Bible talks about God to expect suffering, that God, that's part of life, that God will use suffering. But is what Samuel's saying here true, that God's will is for me or others to suffer?
Right. So the Bible says different things. So that's the first time. So Jeremiah 29:11, I know the plans I have for you, the plans to prosper you, the plans to give you a future and hope. That doesn't sound like suffering. But the reality is when Jeremiah prophesies that, Israel's suffering. They're surrounded by the Assyrian army. Literally, all of the young men have been killed. So all the warriors are dead. Young, pretty women are being sold into slavery. Older women are being sold to work in the fields or just being killed. So, and that's where Jeremiah 29:11 happens. And so God's ultimate will for your life is to bless you. Oftentimes, suffering is how God gets us in a position to where he can bless us. And, as a parent, I've learned that as I love my kids, I have to allow them to suffer so they don't suffer worse later. And I think a lot of parents make the mistake of they don't want their kids to ever go through anything hard or difficult, and what they're really doing is they're preparing them for a life of misery. So you need to allow your kids to experience consequences, to experience loss, even simple things like losing a pet. Those are great teaching moments about the brevity of life, the need to love, grief. Those are learning opportunities, and you don't want to shield your kids from that, but give them an appropriate level of experience with that. Every time your kid makes a mistake, don't swoop in and fix it all, because that doesn't happen in life. So that's what a loving parent does. A loving parent allows children to experience consequences, and at times, if there's a lack of obedience there's actual discipline. And so those are two things. One is the suffering specifically that I think the Bible talks about is trying to preach the gospel to a world who hates God and all that's good.
Right.
That's just a part of it, right? We're preaching news that people don't want to hear. They don't want to hear that I'm a sinner, that if I don't, literally this is the sin of this age. People don't want to hear that I'm a sinner, and if I don't do what you say your God wants me to do, I'm going to hell. And they literally forget that. Who are you? I mean, it's literally, we're preaching uphill. And so that's the suffering that we face. Who am I to say what I believe marriage is supposed to be? Who am I to teach that men, generally speaking, should be the leader in the home, right? That's offensive words. And we can have a whole talk on that because I use the word generally very, very carefully because not all men are capable of leading. So, I just think that there's persecution there for standing up for what we believe God's truth is. So I think that's part of it. And God's will is that we would suffer for what's right.
Right.
So that's his will. You need to be willing to suffer for what's right. So that's his will. But I don't think his overwhelming will is for us to suffer. His will is for us to be saved and to be blessed for all eternity. So you just have to be really, really, really careful with that statement. So And we have to look at when we use the word will in the Bible, like there's God's will for everyone, and then there's God's will for your life, specific life. And so, what is God doing throughout the world, and then what is God doing specifically within you? And those are two different movements. So, and I think that's what a great parent does, right? The great father leads his family and deals with children individually.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
but I hear you. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
So this next question comes in from Christian. She says, in this weekend's message, you mentioned a very well-known verse from 2 Corinthians where God says, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So she asks, when do we know what is a weakness and what is sin? What's the difference? How do I know when I need to stop doing something and when I'm just going to continue to struggle because I'm human and being human is hard?
Right. So I'm going to answer your verse with a verse out of 1 Corinthians 6, chapter 12. Paul says, you say I am allowed to do anything. So we have a lot of freedom in our relationship with God. We're not a religion that's all about rules, but we're about a relationship. He says, but not everything is good for you. And even though I'm allowed to do anything, he says, I must not become a slave to anything. And I think that's the key is when am I doing something that has power over me? So, even like say sex inside the context of heterosexual marriage, God says that's a good thing. When it's controlling you, it's not a good thing. And so you have to watch that. Even within the context of marriage, we have to be willing to be close and to be apart, to be close and to be apart. And so we have to make sure that even within the context, we don't become addicted to anything. And that's what it means to be a slave. And so, I think that, a glass of wine or a beer is okay unless it has power over you. And some things have power over you more quickly. That's why I don't think that you can look at pornography in moderation. It instantaneously has power over most people and immediately leads them into sin. So, I think that it's much easier to have a glass of wine and not sin than it is to view pornography and not sin. Although some people, particularly women, are able to view it and be like, that's gross and moving on. It's very, very challenging for men to view that and not be sexually aroused and then led into sin. So I think that you just really have to look at it so her question specifically was, or was it his question? Her. Okay.
Yeah.
When is it a sin? That's something that needs to be dealt with in community with people that know their Bible and know you, and you need to just bring it to the group and say, here's what I'm worried about. And this is why authentic community is so important, because you need to, have people who know the Bible, because a lot of people don't know the Bible. I mean, they don't know the Bible, and so they just give you their opinion, and opinions are useless when it comes to following God. So you need people that know the Bible, and you need people that know you and can ask questions to kind of figure out where it is, because it's really hard for us, I think, to be real about what's really going on. Like, for example, let's say I have a friendship with a woman at work. I would probably share it like, well, I kind of feel like, and I would beat around the bush rather than saying, I'm really concerned that I'm connecting with this person in an immoral way, right? Those are two different conversations. And typically when people confess sin to me, they come at it from I'm probably not sinning, but rather than man, I really think I'm blowing it. What do you guys think? And so, so you need community that's like, yeah, get away from that, run from that. Don't have anything to do with that. Circle the wagon time. So I think community is really, really important. And then biblical truth. What does the Bible have to say about what you're doing? Because the Bible doesn't speak to everything, but it does speak to a lot of things. So read it, understand it. What does it say? And that's how we learn to know the difference. And also you have to remember, Christian, that as Christians, we have the Holy Spirit inside of us. And so what the Holy Spirit does is when we sin, there's almost like a spiritual sick feeling that's inside of you. And you'll learn this as you grow in your relationship with God. Things that you once did, you won't feel right about anymore. And the Holy Spirit will continue. So as God takes control of your life, he's going to push things out of your life. And you're going to be like, oh man, I used to do that and it never bothered me. But all of a sudden it does. All of a sudden, I can't partake in this anymore. I feel bad about what I'm doing. And God's Spirit is going to speak to you. And so here's the thing that I would say. The Bible says this. Let me give you a verse. To him to whom it is sin, you shouldn't do it. You have to be honest to your own conscience. And so that's why, like my mom just does not feel good about alcohol. She just doesn't feel good about it. And so I think for her, she should not partake in it. It's just not, it's not okay because she feels like it's a violation. And maybe it is for her. And rather than, Christians coming around and browbeating people who don't drink, well, you're not living in your freedom. It's like, whoa. The Holy Spirit can speak to every individual. I mean, I had one of my good friends tell me this. He said when he drinks, he doesn't hear the Holy Spirit. So what's more important? Hearing the Holy Spirit. And, which is interesting because there's a thing called the Nazirite vow in the Old Testament, which is when people are set apart for the service of God. And one of the things that they were never to do was to drink alcohol. And the Bible speaks, that alcohol is a gift from God. It's a blessing of God. It's given to make us have joy and experience joy. But Nazirites were not supposed to drink. So sometimes God speaks to you and says, okay, this is not for you. This issue is not for you. And for some of us, that's sugar. For some of us, it's a television program. I mean, it could be all kinds of things. Like my wife can watch programs on TV that they're just not good for me. They're just not. And vice versa. I can watch things that just are not good for her. It just doesn't, it's not good for her. And so again, what I think we don't know what sin is. Sin doesn't just mean evil. Sin literally means everything that misses the mark. That's what it means. I want to pronounce it in the Greek. I believe it's. I'm not going to pronounce it because I'm going to say it wrong. But but we were actually watching that movie together last week, The Fault in Our Stars, and the female character who has cancer in the movie, she has a slogan for life, and it's actually the Greek word for sin, and I think it's hamartia. Hamartia.
Hamartia, I remember you said before.
It's
sure.
Yeah, I need to go back and actually look at it. I don't have it in front of me, but the English spelling begins with Harm. So, but it means sin, and what it means is to miss the mark. And so it's an archery term where you're shooting at a target, and no matter how much skill you have, you never hit the bullseye perfectly. And that's what sin is. Sin is missing the mark. And so you need to not just ask yourself, is this evil? You need to ask questions like this: is it wise? Is it good for me? Is this going to grow and enhance my faith? And if it's not, don't do it. Don't do it because it's going to cause you to sin. And so sin is a very, very precise movement away from what God has called you to live out perfectly in your life. And so that's where legalism comes from. So what churches do is they try to protect everybody and they build up all these laws and regulations. And the problem with that is they regulate behavior and they don't deal with the heart. And so that's why, you have Catholic priests who have taken a vow of celibacy who end up having sex with a boy that's working, in the church, right? That's a problem. So, I would much rather have church leadership that has an avenue for sex, rather than getting a bunch of guys that are full of guilt with some feelings that are unhealthy and they know that are immoral, right? And it tends to come out in a very, very awful, ugly way. And so I think that, it's just so important that we don't allow ourselves. I had this conversation with a young man that I thought might be a pedophile. This is probably, 5 or 6 years ago at our church. And there was nothing that he had done with a kid, but he was crossing boundaries. And what I said was, look, I'm not saying that you're a pedophile. I'm just saying if you might be, you need to draw a big fat circle around children and you need to avoid them for the rest of your life. Because you will do damage to the child and to your own soul if you cross that line. The person left the church, didn't like what I had to say. Because police job is to investigate crimes. My job is to shepherd sheep. And so there hadn't been a crime, but I'm like, bro, I'm really uncomfortable with how close you're getting, and I've asked you to do these things. So I'm going to draw a big circle around that. So like when we had JC's Girls, a ministry, we had people from our church go to porn conventions, strip clubs. I never went to any of those things because of my growing up with pornography. It was not good for me. And so some people could go and it's not a problem. It was a challenge for me. And so I didn't go. So I drew a line around that for myself. So that's what I would encourage you to do is make sure that you're careful to not sin. And so the question I think most Christians ask is, how close can I get to sin without sinning? And that's the wrong question. Right. The answer is, how close can I get to godliness? Right? We need to draw the line on another side and say, how close can I get to God? Because all of us have darkness, and your issue, praise God, probably isn't pedophilia, but for some people, that's their vice. That's their deal, and they need to protect children from their own passions and twisted desires. That's just the truth. So, and sometimes, unfortunately, being a pastor, you hear the ugliest sides of people. But that's what, being a pastor means is you take confession, and it's sometimes so. Hopefully I didn't overwhelm people, but that's the truth. Don't try to figure out how close you can get to sin without sinning. Draw the line on the other side and try to figure out how close you can be to God without becoming overly religious and, a line drawer and constantly judging people, because that's what people tend to do when they go the other way. So,
well, more for your minivan right there.
Yeah, wow.
Let's keep talking in the sermon.
Welcome to the Family Car Crash, brought to you by The Debrief.
In the sermon this week, and then actually Claude talked about this in his message to kick off the Fit series, you both mentioned that we should prepare for tough times. So what are some practical ways we can do that?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, is anytime something's tough is just accept it. So anything that is difficult is an opportunity to grow, no matter what it is. See it as an opportunity to grow, because what God is trying to call you to do is he's calling you to leave your old life and take on your new life, which is a difficult process. So I don't care what it is. Anything that's hard, you can grow spiritually in. So if it's a difficult thing, just say, okay, I'm going to push through this, because spiritual training is teaching the body that the spirit is in control. That's what it means. Is I am not going to listen to my body. I'm not going to listen to what it wants, and because the body, right, wants to sit on a lazy boy. The body wants to indulge. The body wants to, take care of itself always. And so I need to be led spiritually. And so we don't want to be led by our nature, but we want to be led by our spirit. And so it's just constantly listening to that. And the spirit is going to ask us to do difficult things. Like Jesus said, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And so we have to learn to teach ourselves to be led by the Spirit, which is, in Claude's message, Jesus is led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil for 40 days, after he fasted. So, right, the Holy Spirit was leading him to be tempted in this way, and he prepared for 40 days spiritually, saying no to the body so that he could say no to his desires when the devil physically tempted him. So
Alice says, how do I know that God is with me in those tough times?
Right. So here's the thing is, I feel like we don't always feel God when we're going through it, but we see God after we come out of it. And I think that that's really, really important for anyone who's going through something right now. And again, for those of you who have a friend that's going through something, I think it's pretty normal for people to not see God in the midst of suffering. But after you come out of it, you look back and you go, oh, that's where God was. And so I very rarely saw God in the midst of my suffering, but I saw him everywhere afterwards. You know the old poem Footprints? Where were you, God, when I was all alone? And because he looks and at the most difficult times in his life, there's only one set of footprints. And he says, Jesus, where were you? And Jesus says, those were the moments I carried you. But the wisdom of that poem is life is already over and he's looking back. And that's when we see and experience the power of God. And so what we see and experience when we're suffering is the power of pain. It's after we come through that we see the power of God. And so we just need to know that. So here's what we have to rely on. It's Alice, right?
Yep.
So Alice, let me give you a couple of scriptures. We have to rely on God's word. We can't rely on how we feel, because I'm not always going to feel God.
Right.
So I have to rely on God's word. So Hebrews 13:5, keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have. For God has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So even if I don't feel God, God is there. And that's faith. That's walking by faith. God, I don't feel you. God, I don't see you. God, I don't understand you, but I know you're here and I'm trusting you. That's faith. And that hurts. That hurts. John 14:6, Jesus says, I will ask the Father and he will give you another advocate. That's the Holy Spirit, and he will never leave you. He'll never leave you. He'll be with you to the end of the age. And so we have to trust Scripture over our feelings. And that's a difficult issue in every area of life. But it's God's word versus your word every single day. So in my word, this is how I feel. God's word is, this is how it is. And there's a difference between feelings and faith. They're different. And part of being a Christian is learning to say no to your feelings. It just is. Right. Because when we act on our feelings, right, a lot of us end up in prison. It just is, right? So, I mean, typically when a woman is horrifically murdered, do you know what they call it?
Crime of passion. Passion of crime.
Right? Passion of crime. Yeah. It's a crime of passion. Why do we know that O.J. Simpson was guilty? Because only disgruntled lovers cut their wife's head off. That's like not a normal behavior for just Joe Schmo. It's typically some insane person who's operating according to their heart and their feelings, right? And that's what the world says, follow your heart. Well, the Bible says your heart is wicked. And who can tell the depths of its wickedness? So you got to trust God's word over how you feel. And so if I feel like getting divorced, or I feel like having sex, or I feel like cheating, or I feel like lying, I have to trust that God knows what's best for me. It's not just what God wants me to do, but it's actually the right thing to do, and it's actually the best thing to do for my life. It's the best thing to do. So the world says that, and think, when's the last time you went to a movie where you see passionate lovemaking between a married couple? It's like never.
Yeah.
It's never. Nowhere in our culture is there romantic, passionate love displayed between married people. It's always an affair, it's before, or something else. You know what sex psychologists show and say? Married couples have more and better sex. It's like tenfold than single people. It's not even comparable. Why? Because there's safety, there's love, there's understanding, and it's way, way better. Well, why would God call us to that? Because that's the best for you. The best thing for you is that when you're in your most vulnerable state and you give yourself to someone, they've given themselves completely to you. So, right? I mean, so the world gets it wrong every single time. Every single time.
I wonder if maybe we should use the bell today for minivan moments instead
I
of
think
just
anyone
really good
who
tweetable stuff.
is still trying to listen with their kids in the car
Yeah.
is doing so at their own risk. I'm pretty sure most of our
You might
our
be
parents
sending,
have bailed
get the kids out of the car.
So. I would say too, going on the same vein with what we were saying earlier, I feel like in addition to hindsight, I feel like community is another great place to have people in our lives who can point us to what God's doing in the middle of those tough times. When suffering and pain is overwhelming or you're having hard times. I know I've had several times like that where I'm overwhelmed by how I feel or what's going on. Having other people speak in and go like, I don't think that's what you think it is. Or actually, I see God doing this in your life. Do you notice that this is what I think God is doing through this? And having community to speak into it, I think is so huge too.
Yeah.
So you don't even have to wait until you look back. I would ask the people around you who know and love God and love you. I bet they would be able to start to point to some of those things while you're in the midst of it. So, which is actually really interesting. This next question comes from Anonymous, and she says, my husband is in a rough place right now, physically and emotionally, and he's stopped coming to church and he won't reach out to groups or our campus pastor for guidance. He says he's having trouble being around people. How can I help him through this tough time?
Yeah, it's tough. So guys in particularly struggle with community, honesty, and openness. We're just not good at relationships. Typically women don't need a reason to gather. Guys do. So he's just going through a tough time. So let me just read to you Proverbs 18:1. I think this is a good verse to at an appropriate time share with him. It says, "Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire, and he breaks out against all sound judgment." So actually, what he's doing is he's making his situation worse. And so, what I would encourage you to do is figure out how to best love him. So guys don't respond to nagging, they respond to love. So how as a wife can you love him and then pray to God for an opportunity to speak truth to him? And it's got to be, it's not just how you speak, but it's when you speak. When is the best time to communicate how you're feeling or what's going on? And, rather than guilting him, I really wish you'd go to church, you want to say things like this: I just love it when you come to church with me. I love it when we surf together. I feel, right? See what I'm saying? That's different than you're falling away from God. And I don't think you're being dishonest or disgenuine. You're just approaching the correction from the position of love rather than judgment. And because the truth is, it probably does make her very, very sad because there's a growing gap between them spiritually, which causes a problem in your marriage. So, and maybe start somewhere like with counseling. Sometimes people get on my nerves too. So I don't always want to be around a bunch of people either. So I understand that. But isolation over time makes things worse, not better. The people that are the hardest to help in our church are the ones that are the most isolated. And TV is not community. Blogging is not community. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, that's not community. It's a pseudo community that actually makes you feel more desperate, more alone, more isolated, more of a loser. That's what it does. Oh, look at all the fun that everybody else is having, and I'm stuck here, alone and desperate. And so I just would encourage you to reach out to real community. And for guys, the best way to find community is through service. That's the best way. We're going to do something. We don't have to share anything. We're just going to do something. And then maybe through those friendships, find a group. But ultimately, God's will for your husband's life is that he would not be alone. And, again, he doesn't need a wife telling him what to do. He needs other men speaking into his life, as we all do. I mean, we are different genders, and that affects how we see things and interpret things. And so the best way to deal with a man is with a man. That's just the reality. So I'll be praying for you, and my heart breaks for your husband, whatever's going on. And I hope and pray that he can find healing. And I believe that God wants that in his life. And so just keep praying and keep loving him.
So we have 2 more questions about dealing with suffering. This one comes from Angelina. She says, when someone dies, people always say it was their time. How can that be true? What about when a child dies or someone in the middle of a creative life and something tragic happens? I always thought God wanted the best, longest, most fruitful life for all of us. Can you give me your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So again, Christians say a lot of dumb things. So, and I think when it comes to death, nobody knows what to say. So we live in a culture that ignores death, doesn't embrace death, and is shocked by death. That's just our culture. And so that's a fairly new phenomenon. 100 years ago, half of American children died, before the age of 5.
Right.
Through some kind of disease. Women died, a great deal of women. I don't know the actual statistic, but it's over 35% died in childbirth. It was just a very, very hard time. In the West, the average age was 35. So think about that. California, Arizona, Oregon, Utah, the average age was 35 years old. That's when you died. It was just a really, really difficult place in America not that long ago. So now we live in a culture where we feel like everybody's supposed to live to be 110 years old and have this great long life, and that's just not the reality. So there's a bunch of scriptures that I think that will be helpful. I think the most helpful verse for me personally is Job 14:5, and it says this: "Since his days are determined, and the number of his months is with you, and you have appointed his limits that he cannot pass." And I think that's important. I think that when God lays out the days of our life before we begin, I think there's a limit. So there's a limit genetically. Like you and I have different genetics based upon different families. So some families live a long time. Like my wife's family on her side, there's not many that make 70. My side of the family, it's pretty shocking if you don't hit 90. It's just a different genetic makeup. And so, you can eat well and exercise right, but the reality is there's a limit to the amount of life that you can live. So here's, I think, some really, really helpful passages. In Kings, the book of 1 Kings, it says this: "If you walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will prolong your days." So I think that there's let's say God has ordained that you have 120 years. That's a long. Well, actually, the Bible says that that's the longest that a man can live after a certain event happens in the book of Genesis. So I think that God can extend our days. So that's right? It can be our time, and you can go to God, and God can extend your life like he does King Hezekiah. He extends King Hezekiah's life 15 years. It's an extension. Nobody lives forever. You're going to die at some point. So next verse, Proverbs 10:27, "The fear of the Lord prolongs life, but years of the wicked will be shortened." Why? When you live stupid, sinful way, you're going to die early. That's just a reality. We keep losing all of these great creative artists, but the reality is we're losing them early because of the life they've lived. Right? I don't want to be uncompassionate, but when you live like a rock star, you die like one. That's just the reality. Last night, Tammy and I were watching the story of River Phoenix. He was a huge actor when we were kids. He would be the same age as me. So he died at 22 years old. And he was super famous in the early 90s. And he died by needling heroin and smoking cocaine. That kills most people.
Right.
So that's the lifestyle that he was living, and yet his life was all too short. So I don't believe that it was his time. I believe that he lived a wicked life. And the choices that he made ultimately ended his life. So we need to think about that it's not just all fate. Your decisions actually matter. So here's 2 verses to think about. When people say, a child dies, well, it was their time. So here's Isaiah 38:12. "My life has been blown away like a shepherd's tent in a storm." Listen to these words. "It has been cut short. As when a weaver cuts cloth from a loom, suddenly my life was over." So the Bible talks about a life being cut short. Specifically, guess whose life was cut short? Listen to this verse. Isaiah 53:8. "Unjustly condemned, he was led away. No one cared that he died without descendants, that his life was cut short in midstream. But he was struck down for the rebellion of my people." Jesus didn't live out the number of his days. So his body could have lived longer, but his life was cut short because not of his sin, but of the sin of people. So Psalms 31:15, but my times are in your hand. Deliver me from the hand of my enemies and from those who persecute me. So the thing I love about this psalm is it indicates both. Look, my life is in God's hands. And yet, the very person that's praying, the number of my days is totally in your control, God, is saying, God, make sure that I live out the number of those days. He says, deliver me from the hand of my enemies and from those who persecute me. So what he's saying is I want to live out the number of my days. And so, again, we need to be really, really careful. God is in control, and yet he allows somehow our decisions to have a controlling factor in the number of our days. It just does. And so we need to be really, really careful that we don't blame God every time somebody does something wicked, stupid, or evil. You know, a couple years ago, we had an event here at the Hunter Park campus on a Friday night, and it was horrible. The event ended at about midnight. You guys probably don't even know this story, but the parents came looking for their kids.
Oh, yeah.
And we couldn't find their kids. And, you know, Sandals is a large church, and what we discovered is they never checked in. So their grandmother picked them up and was bringing them to an event here on the church, and they were all killed by a drunk driver down the street. And so the parents were very mad at God. God didn't choose to go get drunk. God didn't choose to get in a car. Those decisions caused a very real consequence and killed a grandma and two beautiful, young 7th grade girls. They died. It was horrible.
Yeah.
I don't believe that was their time. I believe their life was cut short by the sin of someone else. And so that's why it's really, really important. You know, people are so quick to say God's in control of everything. They actually make him this really evil guy. And so
Yes.
you know, even when God pronounces judgment on Israel, right? These bad things are going to happen to you. He sends prophets to warn them. Like, God's always willing to change the plan. Always willing. So he sends prophet after prophet after prophet. You guys got to turn. If you would just turn back, if you would just stop doing this doesn't have to happen. Well, it does. So was it God's will to just judge them and destroy Israel? No. Jeremiah 20:11, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, to give you a future and to hope. God's intent is to bless, but he's not going to allow Israel to continue to live like Canaan. And that's what they do. And, you know, and by Canaan, I mean the wicked people that surrounded them. And a lot of people don't realize that. You know, they say, well, how could a loving God call the Israelites to kill all the people in the land of Canaan? Because they sacrificed babies in the promised land. They sacrificed their children to the god of Molech. They threw babies into fire pits. You know what God's saying? You don't try to convert those people. Those people need to be punished for what they've done to their children. They worship Baal. They worship Asherah, right? So this is a good moment, parents, to turn off the program. But an Asherah pole is a giant penis. That's what it is.
There you go.
I'm assuming that if you worship a gigantic penis, you're probably going to be a little immoral, right?
Likely.
Okay, Baal is the same thing, sex god.
I'll give it to you.
Baal is a sex god. There's always been this challenge between unbridled sexual desires and following God. Those two things have always been against each other. And, you know, it's only recently that culture is trying to say, well, these sexual sins aren't sins. So anyways, I think the Bible has a lot to say about both that our days are ordained by God and numbered by God, and that those times can be cut short, and that we are blessed when we live out the full number of our days. And so I think God wants people to live a long, healthy, and happy life. That's why the commandments like honor your father and mother is the first commandment that comes with a promise. If you do this, your days will be long. What that means is there are consequences for being a dishonorable child. And we have to learn how to honor our parents. So that command has a promise. If you do this, you're going to live longer. So,
Yeah. All right. So this last question on the topic of suffering, we have one little off-topic question we're going to get to at the end here, but it's from Anonymous, and she says, my daughter was born with a facial malformation that has caused so many delays in her life. I've learned so much from her about life, unconditional love, and ultimately she is what brought me closer to God and is why I seek him. But my heart still hurts. How do I overcome this pain?
yeah, I don't think you do. I think you become like God. Right. I mean, God loves disfigured, disabled children, and he loves us to the very end. You know, there's going to be a lot of things about your daughter that you're going to have to learn in the next life. And that's just the reality, because so much of who she is is limited because of her disability. So one of the first things that Jesus does as he walks on earth is he heals disabilities. Over and over again, he heals the deaf, he heals the dumb, he heals the blind. Those are the things that he does. He makes things right. And so there's aspects of your daughter's personality that we're going to get to enjoy forever in the new heaven and the new earth, because she's going to be able to communicate things and express things. And so really her life and this life is really about you and learning to love. And I think that, God is good. So why does a good and just God allow suffering? And so we go back to the sermon this last week, so that the work of God can be seen in you. And here's the beauty of disabled children and people, is I think it causes all of us to be better. So I have 3 kids. None of my kids are disabled. And when I see another parent whose job to care and love that child, they're just better in so many ways than I am. And it humbles me that my children are healthy and whole in that way. I also think that disabilities bring out things in us that need to come out: love, compassion, mercy. We need to be made aware. Europe, as it moves further and further away from God, they're talking about mandatory abortions for disabled children. And it's one of the first things that Hitler did. We got to get rid of the weaker. We got to get rid of the ones who aren't perfect in every way. And that's evil. And I think that we need disabled children in our lives. We need them in our lives. We are blessed by their presence because they help us. They make us better. And they bring something out in us that is not brought out in any other way. And again, God's in it for the long haul, and he's in it for the big picture. And for whatever reason, God in his sovereignty has chosen, probably most of our listeners are not disabled. But what he has called us is to serve these people in a unique and powerful way and to love them. And, I think about this, we have we have a lot of people with disabilities in our church, but there's one girl on Saturday nights. She's I'm not sure exactly what all of her challenges are, but it's some version of autism. But whenever she likes something I say, she makes like a bird noise, and her parents are always trying to hush her because it's distracting to other people and all that. And at first I think it bothered me, and then I just thought, man, she is in her own way affirming what she's hearing, and I'm sure God is pleased with whatever gesture or noise that she can make. And so it touches my heart that she cares. Saturday night I got to be out in the lobby at the Hunter Park campus, and I don't want to be unpolitically correct, so I don't know what the correct term is, but the boy, she said, had autism and I think some type of mental retardation. I know that's not the word that you're supposed to use, but that was his challenge. But she said he loves coming to Sandals and he loves hearing you preach and he wants to meet you. And I said, absolutely. Absolutely. And I just thought, how awesome is that he enjoys coming to church and he appreciates, that. And so I think that, parents with children with disabilities need to be aware of others, that there are lost people. I would just encourage all of our listeners, put your kid in children's ministries, because screaming kids make it difficult. This week, when one of the prayers is I'm praying a prayer of blessing, someone was murdering their child in the audience. I don't know what was happening, but the kid was like just dying. And so we need to think about each other more. I prefer having my kid in the worship center, but if your kid is a distraction to everybody else, so there's a give and take there. But that's why we have special needs ministries at Sandals Church, because there's such beautiful, beautiful people that bring out such special things in us. And so we're very, very thankful for them. And we need to pray for those parents because their job never ends. And then oftentimes there's heartache over what happens when they die, who will take care of their adult child with disabilities. And that's it's a real issue. So I'll be praying for you, but I don't think that you will get over completely the suffering and the heartache and the hurt in this life. It's awful to watch a child suffer. It's why when Jesus paid the penalty for you on the cross, it broke God's heart. So it broke God and his son to bring you and God together. That's what it took. That's the level of pain it took to heal the relationship. So I'll be praying for you. Yeah.
And if you are a parent of a child who has special needs, we have special services for those kids. I think almost every single one of our campuses. We'll throw the link to their email. I think it's just realfriends@sandalschurch.com. We'll throw that in the show notes for this episode, because I know there's a lot of parents out there who probably don't come to church or don't sit in service. They may watch from home because they are worried about bringing their kids here. We want you to be able to come to church. We want you to be able to have, an hour where you get to just focus on God, and we will take care of your kids. We have people who are trained, who are parents of special needs kids themselves, who help out in that. We would love to serve you in that way. So if you're interested in that, check out the show notes for this episode at debrief.show/95. We'll make sure to throw some of those resources in there for you.
Right. And again, I didn't mean to use a word that's offensive. I know that word is offensive to somebody, but that I use, I'm just not sure what the current term is. So,
last night I met the son of somebody who's on our staff for the first time, and I didn't know this. Her son was autistic, and he was so sweet and happy and beautiful. It was great. And then I watched him go out onto the mat to train in martial arts. It was so cool to watch him. He was focused. He was present in ways I never am. I was really inspired by that, just by watching him just for 10 minutes, it was beautiful. So, all right, here is our very last question. It comes from Elena, a little bit off topic here. Says, this past weekend, you asked us to raise our hands to bless this. I love this question. This lady is bold and makes me so happy. This past weekend, you asked us to raise our hands to bless the pastors from the San Bernardino campus. Sorry, I was going to say Chris. Pastor Chris, what's up? I noticed some people did not raise their hands, and when I asked why, which is, how cool is that, by the way? How cool is that? When I asked why, their response was, who are we to bless others? Only God can do that. How should I have responded to them?
Yeah, well, they're wrong. So,
okay.
I mean, there's no easy way to say it. So many times, what we believe in Christianity is simply a reaction to another faith. Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes Protestants, which that's what Sandals Church is, are in reaction to Catholics. Okay. And so in a Catholic church, right, the bishop or the priest will bless you. And so what you do is you throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so there are some aspects of Catholicism that just aren't healthy or biblical, just as there are in every movement of God, because none of us are perfect. But there's beautiful things. And so one of the things that I think Protestant Christians say, or non-Catholic Christians say, is only God blesses. Well, let me just, read you some verses. So Luke 24:50, Jesus led them out to Bethany, lifting up his hands. He blessed them, and while he blessed them, he parted. So Jesus blesses. You say, well, he's God. Okay. Genesis 48:9, Joseph said to his father, these are my sons whom God has given me. And he said, bring them here to me that I may bless them. Exodus 39, Moses saw all the work, and behold that they had done it. And it's actually, by the way, creative team, the creative work that they had done. Mm-hmm. And the Lord commanded, so they had done it, and then Moses blessed them. So he blessed the artists. Joshua 22, Joshua blessed the entire congregation of Israel. There's just, I want to keep reading. Yeah, there we go. Aaron in the Bible lifts up his hands toward the people, and he blessed them. Simeon in the gospel blessed Mary, Joseph, and Jesus as Jesus was appointed. 1 Peter 3:9 says this, do not repay evil for evil, don't retaliate with insults. When people insult you, instead pay them back with the blessing. So not only are we to bless God's people, we're to bless our enemies. And the same thing is repeated in Romans 12:14, bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. So it's actually a commandment. So we're actually commanded to bless somebody when they've hurt us. So this person is just wrong. A blessing is something that's beautiful. It is something that's powerful. And I haven't even actually read any of the blessings in Scripture. I mean, they're actual blessings. I mean, they begin with these words, may the Lord bless you. May the Lord cause his face to shine upon you. And so why is that verse in there? It's in there to be read to others. That's why it's there. I mean, we don't just make up a blessing. We read it and we do it over others. And that's something that's really, really important. And our next series is actually called Blessed, we haven't decided on the actual name, but that's what it's about. It's about being blessed. And, I just think it's sad. What that really reveals in the heart of a person is they're saying, I don't want to participate in what God is doing. And that just breaks my heart. What it really reveals is A, biblical ignorance, but B, stubbornness. And that's not a good quality. I mean, why wouldn't you want to participate in praying for and saying a blessing over this couple that's going to go to San Bernardino and they're going to try a new work of God? Is that not blessed? Mm-hmm. So and what we do as Christians is, this is just important. We are God's ambassadors. We represent him. And so we can bless people just as God blesses them. And we can pray for people just as, Jesus prays for people, and we even have the power to forgive. When people confess their sins, we can say, you're forgiven. We can say those words in the name of Jesus. And that's powerful because we've been given that authority by Christ as followers of Christ. And so that's not just something that a bishop does or something that a priest does or something that a pastor does. It's actually something that fathers should do to their families.
Yeah.
If you're a single mom, you should do it to your families. We should bless our children. We should bless our friends. We should bless marriages. We should bless our church. We can ask the Lord to bless our home. Lord, bless this home. Make it a beautiful place. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing saying, God, we want your power, your presence, your energy, your spark. We want it to be on this place. And that's what it means. And so I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And just know a lot of Christians are wrong about a lot of stuff. And it's just sad. And so, go to the Bible. What does the Bible say? And so, I've read 8 scriptures?
Yeah.
8 specific scriptures, and I haven't even read actual blessings. So, and the Apostle Paul, just to close with this, says to the church, I can't wait to come to you to receive, listen to this, a double blessing. And he's not being just like figurative. He's actually going to come and pray a prayer of blessing over the church, and they are going to pray a prayer of blessing over him. And that's what you do in Catholic Mass. The priest prays a prayer of blessing over the congregation, and the congregation prays one back to the priest. It goes both ways.
Yeah.
And so we need to understand that. So anyways, have grace for people. All of us are wrong somewhere. We just don't know where we're wrong. So.
Well, there you go. There's episode 95. This one's not for the minivan. We hope you did enjoy it, though. If you guys want to support the show, we are so grateful for those of you that do. You can simply do that by texting GIVE 951 to 900 4120. And if you want to give some cashola, help us out here, continuing and furthering the vision of Sandals Church, bringing this podcast and many more great things to you, including episode 100, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, February what?
26th.
It's a Monday night.
So
Monday
that we
night,
can
February
have
26th.
the episode out on Tuesday as usual.
Block your calendars.
Yeah, so you want to make sure you're following us at Debrief Show on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We will have all of the resources there for you to find out how to join us for that 100th episode, how to share quotes from this episode, how to share this episode itself. We would love to have you follow us along there and invite your friends to as well. And we will have some notes and verses and all kinds of fun stuff in the show notes for this episode at debrief.show/95.
Well, see you next week, kids.